Hi everybody, how you doing? Back here in Oxford Circus with another Facebook Live. I'm right outside Oxford Circus station, as you can see, but I'm also just outside Nighttown, which is a useful starting point for this. Because obviously Nike, you know, they're all about talent development. They've invested millions and millions, probably even billions over the years in really, really talented sports people. And one of the things they love is to see those people succeeding in competition. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. So this is going to be a series, 7-part series, talking about the seven deadly sins of talent development. And the first one we're going to talk about is competition, because it's particularly pertinent at the moment. It's just something that's on my mind. Following the weekend's activities, I mean, what we saw was, certainly in the elite domain, some fantastic competition going on this weekend. Anybody who watched on Friday night, anybody who watched the fantastic test match, Rugby Six Nations test match between Wales and Ireland, can't have failed to be impressed by the level of commitment, dedication. Two sides, 30 warriors going at it, absolutely hammer and tongs. It was almost the exact, it's the epitome of what top level elite sport should be all about, not holding back, really going for it. Fantastic. And then likewise, we saw the England-Scotland game along similar lines, different score lines, but still some fantastic displays of competitiveness on offer. And then I want to contrast that with sport for kids, sport for children, and from this sort of talent development concept, and what role competition has to play in helping people or helping young people develop. And I'm just not convinced by some elements of competition. Now, let's just start this in the right way. First things first, this is not a conversation about being anti-competitive. It's not about not wanting children to compete. Competition's fantastic. You want children to compete. You want them to really enjoy what they're doing. You want them to learn about the positives side of it, the negative side of it. You want them to learn about, managing in adversity and failure and all those sorts of things. That's all part of the sports experience. That's really, really important. But there's a dark side, as with anything, and if we veer too much into that dark side, then we run a significant risk of really curtailing the development of young people. And that's where I'm wanting to start this conversation today, is to explore that dark side. So I was with my under-10s yesterday for a festival, and I say the word festival in inverted commas, because a lot of sports, gone down this road now of having festivals, which, where there isn't really kind of a winner or a loser, in an effort to, kind of change the mindset, change the ethos for coaches and adults and people like that, in order to try and almost dial down the competition element of these activities, and in a way to, almost like modify the behaviour of people. And what they're trying to do essentially is try and create a better experience for young people, which, as you'll all know, I'm really into. The problem you see with a lot of the competitive side is, and I saw this yesterday, is when young people are competing, if we look at it from the wrong lens, then we're in danger of actually ruining what it is we want them to create. So we want them to have a great experience, don't we? Yes, and nobody would disagree with that. But at the same time, we also want them to develop. Well, the problem you've got is, when we become overly competitive, what happens is we potentially, firstly, we can destroy the experience for the children, because people screaming and shouting and acting like nutcases on the sideline isn't going to help anybody, and it's certainly not going to help those children be creative and expressive and try new things. They're just going to do the safe thing. The second thing is that it starts to encourage coaches who are there to develop the players to coach in a different way. It starts to get coaches to say, don't do this, don't do that. Or it starts to say, it starts coaches to use rules in a certain way, you know, rule bending or to use the rules to, you know, create a tactical approach that might be quite successful, but isn't particularly developmental. Because, you know, if you organise a group of children to be really effective to win a game, that's great, you know, you can get them to play, but it doesn't ask them to solve any problems. They're just responding to the instructions, tactical instructions that we give them. So they're not really developing and using the competitive opportunity to learn. And then on the other side of it as well is that it begins to drive some other really negative behaviours. And I even started to feel some of this yesterday through some conversations I had with some parents, where there's this driver to, you know, play your best team. And I've had a couple of conversations recently with people where, you know, I've heard people say things like, well, if I don't play my best team, we won't do very well in the tournament or league or whatever, and the kids will leave. Which I always think is a really interesting idea, because firstly, I don't know what that's based on. You know, it's based on nothing other than an assumption, I assume. But secondly, we're concerned about the 3 or 4 kids who are, you know, quite competitive or fairly advanced and what have you. And we're less worried about the children we'd be leaving out. So the problem I've got there is that, you know, if we decide, right, we're going to play our best team, we're going to leave kids on the sideline, or they're not going to get as much game time, pitch time, or, you know, and I have seen and saw some stuff on Twitter this morning about, you know, coaches who will play their best team and leave children on the sideline who won't actually participate at all. And I just think to myself, well, how are we going to retain people in the game if that's the way we act? But more importantly, what message does that send out? And this is why it's a talent development killer, because it basically says that the kids on the pitch, they're the best. The kids who aren't on the pitch, they're not good enough. And the problem with that is it's a double-edged sword, because it's the kids who are on the pitch think, well, you know, I'm the best. I don't have to work for my place. I don't have to work to stay on the pitch. The kids who are on the sideline think, well, I'm never going to be as good as that other person. It's something that a piece of research by Jean Cote and a number of colleagues did, and they call it I think they call it the Pygmalion Effect. It's this idea that children begin to understand their own abilities by reference to others around them and by reference to what coaches and parents expect of them. So we're sending out some very subtle and important messages that actually, within this competitive environment, that you're good enough and you're not, which actually can be quite damaging and quite lasting. And quite often, the only difference between these players is the amount of time they've had playing. So very often, the more able children, by definition at the moment, are usually just they've been doing it longer. And you've got some other children who've come into it a little bit later on, or whatever, and they're not quite as good. That's not to say they couldn't be given an equal experience as everybody else. So that's one of the reasons it's really important to, from a talent development perspective, to view competition from that kind of lens. Yes, it needs to be challenging. Yes, it needs to be engaging. Yes, children need to learn about the highs and lows and everything else. But it can't be at the expense of the idea that they've all got a right to participate. And actually, they've all got an equal right to develop. They've all got an equal right to get as much learning as everybody else. So if competition and our desire as adults to succeed in competition starts to drive us towards behaviours where we will reduce the amount of exposure or participation time of some young people, and we will increase the amount for others, then that can't be right. And not only can't it be right, but also it's actually going to work against what is the very thing that we're trying to develop, which is sending out the messages that it's great to develop, it's great to improve, it's great to try different things. And actually, if you don't keep trying to improve and you don't keep trying to do different things, then other people are going to get opportunities to develop themselves and go beyond where you are. So, number of different things in that, but that big thing there for me around how competition can change the behaviour of coaches, and I feel this myself sometimes. You know, I'm naturally somebody who wants to, you know, compete, and you know, you want to see the children do well and all these sorts of things. And I sometimes find myself having to kind of check myself and really kind of deep down think, right, what is my philosophy? What do I have here central to my core around how I want children to enjoy the experience, and also how I want them to develop as people and also develop as a group. And I have to stay really, really close to that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And I think to myself sometimes that, you know, for me, with what I know and the stuff I do for a living and everything else, you know, if I'm struggling with this every now and again because of that competitive environment, then how difficult must it be for everybody else out there, you know, who hasn't got the benefits of that kind of thing to fall back on. So what I'm hoping this first video might do is help some people, if they're wrestling with that concept as well, to know that everybody participating is not only a good thing from the perspective of we've got lots more people excited about sport and enjoying having a great time, but actually developmentally it's the best thing you can do for children. What we've just got to remember, and this is the final thing I'll leave you with, what we've just got to remember is that competition for children should be an opportunity for them to learn. It should be an opportunity for you as a coach to test, if you like, or kind of see how what you've been doing in your coaching sessions is translating. And it's almost like doing like a little exam. You know, how is what we've been doing in our coaching translating into the game environment? And look for examples of where that is happening, and look for other examples where it isn't, which you can then use to reflect and redesign your practices to help learning. That's what competition's about. It's about an opportunity to learn, and it's an opportunity to understand where we are. It's like a benchmarking mechanism. It's not an end in itself. The outcome and the focus of the outcome of competition isn't the important thing. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And where that takes me next is we're going to be talking about the next deadly sin of talent development, which is comparisons, which will come around about the same time next week, all being well. Thanks all for listening, if you've stuck with me this long, and see you again soon.